What's up, gigagamers? Welcome to the Strat Chat. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Talking about the LCS, what's going on the past couple of days as far as the player walkout, what the league looks like, what's going on. So I wanted to react to this video and take this update written by Riot to see what's going on. And also I wrote out some of my thoughts as far as what I would consider to be an amelioration and a two-sided win as far as the treatment of players, the state of the league, and things like this. So bear with me. If you have some ideas, I'd be happy to hear about it, but I'm going to go on and start reading and just let you know what's going on. So first, an update on the 2023 LCS summer season. There's been a lot of discussion over the past few days about the North American Challenger League and the LCS players walkout. I know many of you have questions about where Riot stands, so I'd like to share some thoughts, as well as scheduling a decision we've made with the goal of getting to a positive outcome. All right, so good. I'm glad that they are being forward with speaking to the public. That's a good thing. You want to put this out. You want it to be good. We'll see what the tone of it is. First and foremost, we support players. We also support teams, and we believe more than ever in the LCS. The LCS has always been a flagship league for LOL esports, and we care deeply about it. We know that everyone in the ecosystem, from the players to the teams, to Riot, to everyone behind the scenes, making each week possible, and so many others, all share the same goals for the LCS. That's true. Everybody wants LCS to succeed. We need an LCS that is thrilling to watch and showcase the highest levels of League of Legends play. We need a league that represents the pinnacle of North American competition, one that serves as an aspirational goal for competitive players who want to build a career playing League of Legends with a clear path to the LCS. We need an esports league that will one day bring the Summoners Cup home to North America, and we need a sustainable, economically viable, predictable league that supports a thriving ecosystem around it for the players, teams, analysts, coaches, support staff, casters, broadcast crews, and more. So that's where they're referencing everyone around that makes it happen. It is interesting talking about making sure that there is a path to pro. That is something that I didn't really address, and I don't have a great answer for, except for having potentially a draft and having players need to play college so that they get into a team and then get noticed, that you have a better funnel system. I don't know if that's it, but there are some options to discuss there. But they also talked about making this a thrilling showcase. I have a very specific issue with that because your policies up to this point have not been consistent with that. The fact that you make players have a rank, that you force them to climb in a pretty toxic environment that you don't do enough to ameliorate, that's got to go. And it did. So, that's part of the news that already happened. They took away the restrictions. Now, they took it away potentially because of scabbing players. That's what everyone on the media wants to run away with this. But I think it's also step one for this process where you just don't force them to play monotonous games in solo queue. It doesn't matter if a top 50 player gets into a game with the pro. They might get in one anyways, but that's not important for the health of the league at all. There's been a lot of talk about the current state of esports, including esports' long-term future. Over the last few months, we've been more focused than ever on meeting the team's needs for economic sustainability. But we also know that sustainability can't come at the expense of having a robust, thriving development pipeline or bring fresh homegrown new blood into the league. We're excited by what we see in the amateur and collegiate scenes, and know we need to do more to nurture those communities and bridge the gap between them and professional scene. All right, so that's good that they're aware of it, and we knew they were. The amount of scholarships has grown every single year. There is a budding, blossoming college scene that can get you. The question is whether or not the pro teams actually look into it and you make them address those college teams so a player is ever incentivized to actually go to college to play. We also believe in a tier 2 development system. Okay, we don't have enough players to make this like a AAA, although it could be like that in the future. You basically need to have a bench, is what I'll call it, and let the bench players have a way to play. But let's see. We also know that our past efforts with the LCS Academy haven't produced consistent results in terms of promotion to LCS. We believe that tier 2 can be a viable, but that is the teams running them fault. That is not the system's fault. So be careful about that, because I do very much think that a team would have been better plugging through the system and growing a player and investing in that player rather than investing overseas and then having to retrain that brain to work with an American, Korean, or whatever influencer or dynamic. Like, that's the team's own faults for not developing their own players. Riot has successfully architected a Tier 2 ecosystem in other major regions, Europe, China, and Korea, and we want to do the same for North America. It will take some shifts and trade-offs to get there, so to help the North American scene through this transition, we've decided to give our NALCL partner, Rally Cry, an additional $300,000 in order to jumpstart the season next week. Hopefully this isn't just, hey, use this on scab players. This funding is in addition to the revenue share to the NACL teams we announced last week. I wish they had linked that right there so I could check it out. Transition from the ineffective academy system to the new Challenger League or Academy League model will be helped by this funding. We'll also be working with LCS and NACL teams along. All right, see, this is the problem. They shouldn't be considered two teams. Unless they're talking about a whole nother league. Maybe that is what they're doing there. No, this is Academy. I don't know. If they're talking about an entire second league, then you're going to have this interesting thing where you have partnerships between a main team and they call them sister teams for pipelining players and things like that. It's very interesting. You could have that the way Major League Baseball does. But, I mean, at first, the main teams just need to have a second squad that practices with the main squad and then gets a chance to play on stage on their own. LCS and NACL teams, along with the LCSPA, to increase upward mobility opportunities for players to the LCS, which is the ultimate goal of Tier 2 Development League. To make sure we live up to the quality we've promised to fans, we're delaying the LCS season for 2 weeks. Okay, so they're basically saying teams will go to the table to discuss things for 2 weeks. All that said, a top priority for us is always the fans. While last week we immediately put in place contingency plans to begin the LCS season on Thursday, we ultimately decided that it would not hold true to our values. Good job. That Riot's Esports offers our players and fans a showcase for the best competitive league of legends. Nothing but putting the best players in North America on the stage at Riot Games Arena is acceptable. So we informed LCSPA leadership today that we will delay the season in the next 2 weeks. Good. They're not tone deaf. Hopefully this 2-week window will give us time for productive dialogue between the LCSPA teams and the league, and then resume LCS competition this summer. The LCS will not be penalizing the teams for not fielding their roster during the 2-week period to allow everyone space to focus on constructive dialogue. We are doing our best to ensure LCS employees, contractors, and others supporting the LCS are not negatively impacted by the delay. Delaying beyond the 2-week window would make it nearly impossible to run a legitimate competition, and in that case would be prepared to cancel the entire LCS summer season, which means no players would get paid. Carrying this forward, if the LCS summer season is canceled, this will also eliminate LCS teams qualifying for Worlds. I want to be clear that is not an outcome we'd want, but it's unfortunately the reality of ensuring we run a fair, competitive global system. It's interesting, they're talking to this is public facing, but this is a warning to the teams saying, like, listen, we've got 2 weeks to get this done and we got to go. And there is a mutually beneficial plan that can come out of this, but this is definitely saying, we don't want this, but we will cancel, so your players won't get paychecks if you don't come to the table and fix this within 2 weeks. The LCS PA has made several requests. Here's how we've addressed them. I also want to address the 5 demands from the LCS PA with the responses that we provided the LCS PA today. Institute Valorant-style promotion and relegation between LCS and NACL. Okay, so this is talking about the what we'll call amateur league. And where they can move up and move down. American sponsors tend to hate this, but this is how it's done across the rest of the world. You have relegation. If you're the worst team, you go down, and that incentivizes people to compete always. Expanding the league in order to implement a Valorant-style visitor slot system would run counter to our existing partnership model with the 10 LCS teams who paid $10 million per slot to compete in the league. Yeah, it's true. Basically, they said they wouldn't do this. It would dilute the LCS team's equity and put considerable downward pressure on the amount of revenue. that we share with the teams. More teams in the pool would dilute the revenue that we share 50% with our teams under the partnership model. Given the challenging macroeconomic climate, expanding the league is not a good idea at this time. I 100% agree. This was what you promised the league when you set it to not be relegation system, when they made the LCS franchising in 2017. And as far as the monetary, like, yeah, that would kind of make sense, although, you know, having all of those teams maybe be competitive might be a good thing in its own right. Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for the following year for 5 players who win NACL Summer Finals. Guarantees LCS minimum contracts. Okay, so not actually getting to the LCS, but making them receive what the pros would get in case they don't get picked up. I love this, especially because the minimum contract is actually fairly low. It's way too low for the value of the league. But that said, some teams like TSM over invested in international players that ended up going away. Like, there's tons of mismanagement happening, and it's because these teams are largely run by ex-players instead of by actual management teams. That has changed, but at least that is what the beginning of the league ecosystem was. So anyways, minimum contracts. Basically, if you win the NACL, it's as if you got picked up. Whether or not you actually got picked up by a team and a minimum contract, at least you'll get that contract for the following year, and I like it. Guaranteed LCS contracts for winners aren't a necessary component of a healthy developmental league. LCS teams are in the best position to decide who would get a shot. We will continue to discuss initiatives to connect LCS to NACL players, like we have in place with scouting grounds. Players should rise to the LCS based on merit, potential, and team fit rather than artificially forced mechanism. Well, yeah, but this is very little money. We're talking about like $200,000 right here, total. And our focus will be on finding ways to increase the flexibility and mobility of that movement rather than forcing it. So, I mean, they're basically saying no. They're saying there's a better path or a more natural path, but the truth is, if you want players to actually try to get into your pro league, you need to incentivize it. And so far the answers have been kind of on the greedy side, but you have to actually incentivize them, saying you can win this league, which is the best you can possibly do when you're in this league, is to win it, right? If you win the league, you will get rewarded with an LCS contract. Minimum contract. 40,000 is not very much, all right? That is someone who is dedicating their lives. Everybody in that league is basically dedicating their lives to League of Legends and should be able to get by in some way, shape, or form. It's not that much. And also, you know, the league minimum compared to what they're actually making, so they only have to cover that difference. This seems kind of greedy that they're not willing to find a maximum of $200,000 on making this happen. I understand that they don't need to get to the LCS. I think this might be a misunderstanding. Players should rise to the LCS. They're not saying that they need to get to the LCS. The thing is, you need to pay them. They need to be guaranteed a contract. Institute a 3-5 continuity rule to provide players on released NACL rosters first priority in maintaining their slots in the upcoming NACL season if a majority continue to compete together. Teams provide greater continuity and structure, and therefore will continue with our policy of slot ownership residing with organizations rather than players. Huh? I don't know what this 3-5 rule is. But again, like I hear the tone right here. Again, it's, you know, that's not on us. Riot commit to a revenue pool for player salaries of $300,000 per NACL team per year. This ask is for multiple millions in subsidies for the NACL. That simply isn't sustainable. And to be brutally honest, it shouldn't be necessary. We have other Tier 2 leagues around the world which thrive on their own, and we believe NACL can get to that place too. What we will do is help North American scene through this transition. So as I mentioned above, we will be investing in a bridge period by providing a special one-time payment of $300,000 to the NACL's tournament operator, Rally Cry, to support NACL teams during the transition to the new structure. So again, it's like, all right, no, we're not going to give you your $300,000 guaranteed, but we are going to give you $300,000 to like help you transition to a spot where you can make more money. The idea is that the other systems around the world are making money. Now the question is how much of that is still like inflated marketing contracts because everyone was on the bubble boom to get into esports. But again, they're very much saying like, no, like we're not giving in. We'll give you this one-time 300,000, which strikes me as potentially greedy. Now I don't know the exact numbers. I don't know where their profit versus growth versus actual revenue, and expenditures is going to be. But so far, they're basically saying no. Whether or not that means that they're not actually profiting and they can't afford to give anything, I don't know. Allow LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. We've seen examples of partnerships between pro teams and tier 2 teams across the globe result in greater upward mobility of pros and more sustainable tier 2 ecosystems. That's true. So this would be like having a farm team. So for example, the Worcester Red Sox play AAA baseball and the Boston Red Sox are in the major leagues, and so they have priority for all the players that are there. It tends to work well, it seems like, and you see a lot of, hey, let's move someone up to see what they've got. That is why we already and will continue to allow affiliate relationships to exist between teams in the NACL. Okay, so apparently it's suggesting that they were asking for this or just asking to maintain that we keep this, so we're keeping it. Moving forward together, we remain hopeful that the time window now ahead of us will allow us to put in place a condensed yet competitive LCS summer season with the league's best players and teams. Thanks for taking time to read this, and look for more information from me and or other Riot leaders in the days and weeks ahead. Naja Taha is the global head of LoL Esports. All right, so good article. I like that they're forward facing with it. They're basically saying like, no, here's $300,000 and 2 weeks, and you guys better comply with no, is what it seems like. But it'll be interesting to see how this moves forward. I think largely having real ownership groups will help these teams invest and sustain. It's partly in due, like our market's not great for it. We've never been a community that likes watching the second and third tier of games as much. So it's tough to ask, people to really care that much, but you can promote it. You can make some games and have some success in NACL. All right. So here's my, I don't want to call it addendum or manifesto, just guidelines, things that I think would help the teams get by and to create a thriving professional system. This is less about transition, but also what professional teams need, because I know pros are also upset at the type of schedule. We saw the mismanagement of everything that happened with Danny and other cases, not to single them out. There's been plenty of them, but the general path needs to improve in a lot of different ways. So here's some baselines. Here are the basic professional right that you should have. Every player should have access to a vital support staff, including to but not limited to a team-sponsored nutritionist. This is for your body, your health, your trainer, all right, physical. Keep making sure that you're in a good spot, healthy, that your body's in a good place, but also that when you retire, you'll, be ready. Healthy body, healthy mind. Team psychologist is important. I put this separate from league for a very specific reason, because teams can want better psychologists, and this can be a competitive edge as far as getting a good psychologist. This is different from mental health, which is what I put below. We should have teachers in case we have foreign students that need tutors, people that need some amount of life coaching on what to do their entire adolescent life. Maybe age 13 to 24 has been spent playing a video game, so something to help set them up for future after the LCS. And in conjunction with that, a career consultant, someone that can handle finances or teach them how to handle finances, that's investing and what to do, how to build a brand for themselves once they're retired or while they're playing. And then a human resource so that players have someone to speak with about issues and everything that goes on within running the team. Then a league-sponsored doctor, all right? A medical personnel that should be provided by the league to prevent any sort of predatory employment. Things like what happened with Evil Geniuses. We've seen it happen with the Washington football team, and many times in sports where they doctor the results excuse that, I didn't mean to use doctor, where they change the results favorably so that they can get too much out of players. And then I think this is just a simple thing. The teams should not be forced to live together. Players, I don't mind if you want to have, if people choose to live in a gaming house, I think players should live on their own to promote a lot of, well, how do I put it? I want to have a separate situation where you live in one place and you work in another. And when you live in a game house, you can feel a lot of extra pressure. Be like, all right, hey, let's get extra games in right now. Plus, there's other people. You know, having roommates and housemates means that it's a busier lifestyle, and you can't always be exactly who you want to be. So I do wish, or if people want to live alone, that they can live alone. They may feel like they can't if there's a gamer house that has 4 of their 5 teammates, though. So I would encourage, definitely, you do not have to live. Coaches should not live with players or owners. They should always be separate, and players should probably try to get their own spaces as well. And as far as professional privilege, right, the things about being a pro in the league that are, to me, across all other sports, you know, ubiquitous privileges that players can have. I didn't put support to family because there's not that much growing families within the LCS yet, but that could happen. But professional privilege, practice tool needs to be improved to the point where it can be the ubiquitous training tool for professional players. All right. It is unacceptable that it still has bugs. It is unacceptable that you can't load a team onto it. It needs to be set so that teams can create a situation and drill it and work on it. And to that extent, we need chrono break. We need to be able to take existing games that happened, whether or not they happened live or they happened in the practice tool, and say, okay, that was good. Let's rebuild it. Boom, rewind, reset, coaching point, do it again. That is how teams will actually get better. And with a product, when you're talking about the competitive league as a product, you want the players to be great. You want greatness on media so that people can see it and aspire to play like that. That's what makes people want to play and like get good and play more, is when they see other people being great. As far as player privilege, another thing I didn't put on, but let me just add it right now. Player cams, accessible to everyone. All right, so your POV as a player, I want to see the mouse clicks that Whippo is making or that Licorice is making. I want to see where they're thinking. I want to see where their camera is. Because if I'm a top laner, I want to play like them. Not only that, but we should have this for the sake of the coaches. I believe personally that every team should have a position coach. They don't always do that. But if you have someone and you can look at a player's camera, their vantage point, and then the coach can talk about, hey, I want you to be looking here. I want you to be looking there. These things should always be accessible to all of the players and the coaching staffs. Players should not have to play in solo queue ever. The existing system is said, no, we want pros to play solo queue because we want people who climb the ladder to feel like when they play against a pro that they've made it. I think that's a problem where you should just incentivize more things in the ladder, wash, and then pros can actually play together. Now, this has already happened. That's why it's struck through. They removed all of the requirements for teams as far as having a rank. Now, the media ran away with this, be like, tee-hee, I'm a gold player, why don't you sign me up for the LCS? That's not what it's meant to do. What it's meant to do is not make it so pros have to grind solo queue on top of an already demanding schedule. All right, so if this rule was instituted to get scabs in, I hate it, but if this rule ultimately serves where players don't have to play solo queue, I'm happy. Teams should be practicing in-house more than forcing scrim blocks. I think scrimmages are good once preseason to get your team into a competitive mindset. That's it. After that, you should be working with your team. It is detrimental to share strategy with other people. These games often don't go to full fruition. They don't practice the end game. If you were going to scrim against another team and say, hey, let's have a joint practice where we're going to go into this game, you guys are going to play, but then we're going to say, stop. All right, we're going to let that Baron fight happened. We're all going to back off. No one's going to buy items. We're just going to come back to the same spot, wait 5 minutes for the Baron to spawn and do it again, like joint practice style, then that could be beneficial. All right, but having the majority of your practice footage being a scrim block where you only get one opportunity to try something as a team. If you want to say, hey, let's try this 2.5-minute play, third wave stack dive, we're going to dive bottom with 4v2, and at the same time, top laner's going to go in to get a deep ward behind mid. Like, you only get one chance to do that. All right? You probably couldn't even follow along. I don't even remember what I said. But they can, to be able to take a scenario and say, all right, let's do that again. That's valuable. You need to be able to do that in these situations. But you only can get that opportunity once, and everyone's going to try to win, so they're going to hedge on, this is what I think is safer as far as trying to win rather than trying to improve. In my opinion, scrim blocks are detrimental. Team schedules should allow for media time. All right. Now, I call this, basically, you want a day off for players. There needs to be a day off for their own sanity. They tend to like creating for themselves. Media time can be a moment for the team to be out and about, but also the players can have stuff for their own brand. This is basically brand building time that is meant to be fun. It's with the public. It's doing something on Monday morning, or you can change it to Monday night and be the rest of Monday, be the break. Whichever one works. But you need built-in break time, and you need some time where they can invest in themselves and their brand. It's good for the teams. It's good for the players. This will help them when they retire. They will be able to keep more viewers if they get more camera time. So largely, I suggested 9 to 12. If you have a normal workday, this would be a normal ask, but also would be fine to like make this 6 to 9 on Monday, right? Or whatever time, 5 to 8, something late in the day, where it's like, all right, you get Monday off, you can rest, and then rejoin us. We'll do something for media for everybody at that moment up late in the day. The second team should have an opportunity to play on stage. All right, so I want every team to have 10 players, at least, probably 11. 5, your main position. 5, your backups, okay? But that second team can play. They aren't ever going to draw the same crowd that the first team does. So I'm going to talk about the schedules in a little bit, but first team should be playing best of 3s. Second team should be playing a best of 1 against the same opponent. Get them a day to do it, all right? So the pro schedule needs to be fewer trips to the studios. It is asinine to sometimes ask them to drive, sometimes up to an hour, to get to the studio, and they need to be there 3 hours early. Then they have to wait for all games to conclude so then they can do media time afterward. It's ridiculous that basically their entire Saturdays and entire Sundays are ruined because of this best of 1 and the demands at the pros team. I hate the schedule. There needs to be fewer trips. The trips also need to be shorter. All right. We don't need to be there for the entire time. I don't need to get there at 11 in the morning if I don't play until 5. That doesn't make any sense. Other professional teams ask their players to get there early, but like a football team can practice and warm up, and they can do a lot of things down there. They can also sign autographs. There's media time, right? It's a different situation here. We don't need them to be there 5 hours early. So what I want is every week to be a Friday night best of 3, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. 2 teams getting a bye. Okay, and then you can have a super week where you have more people play. On Thursday night, you would have your second team play against the other team. So if I'm Cloud9 playing versus Golden Guardians, my starters are going to play a best of 3 on Friday night. But on Thursday night, all of the Academy teams are going to go in, and Cloud9 would play against Golden Guardians, second team. Best of 1, something for the fans, something for the players to have a chance to play. And you get that. They make 1 trip, they're back. Now our team makes 1 trip, and we're back. And that's it as far as trips to the studio. By having this 2-bye system, you could have a schedule that looks like this. This is only one of literally billions of schedules you could propose. But it would be that on week 1, teams 1 and 2 had a bye. All right, you randomly assign it. You probably make it so that last year's champions are not the ones with a week 1 bye. In fact, you could even create a system where based on your ranking in last split, you get to choose which team you are. Most teams would probably want this bye and something like this bye. But then you can create this system where you have 2 teams on bye every week until the final week of the season where everyone plays, and that way you have the best chance at competitive integrity as it pertains to like getting to the playoffs and scheduling. Although their playoff format is very good where it's not really incentivized to ever lose on purpose, so I don't think you'd have an issue with that. So this week could really be anywhere. You could have Super Week to lead off, you could have it in the middle, you could have it at the end. teams should require naturalized spots on their rosters. This is already a thing. You need to have people on your team that are from your region and on your overall squad. Riot, this would be new. Riot should offer scholarships for post-professional education covering at least 2 years of community college, or make a deal with a local school and sell a series called Next Chance U or something like that. We've had Last Chance U with East LA College, I believe it is. Why not do that with an esports team? As you know, maybe there's less draw. Who knows? Maybe there's more. But you could have some sort of system, or it wouldn't cost you very much to give these players 2 years of community college. Basically, the same reason I wanted them to have a tutor on the team. A lot of these players have given up their entire educational, main educational years, right? 13 to 20. You need to be able to give them something back so that they can become pros. Also, this is a great thing to show parents of prospective young players, hey, you can invest in your player going up through the system, because at the end they're gonna get a college education. This is the bare minimum. 2 years of community college minimum. Not that hard to get it. Everyone can go. They need a professional life if they don't succeed with media, right? Becoming a streamer or something like that. But they should still learn about business, marketing, right? The things that could make you a good streamer. You can take 2 courses a week for 2 years at community college, right? So you can make this happen. So this is what I think the league needs. I think that with the release, the answers that they put out, they're not going to budge that much as far as a total revenue, but this is something that teams can do. They just need a little bit of help from Riot. This would help their schedule. It would ease it for players. This is largely about players, okay? Making sure that you take care of the players and make sure that they feel like there's an investment, something they can go into. And this is good for teams as well. Having a best of 3 is great, all right? If Cloud9 could go to Worlds every year with 26 best of 3s under their belt rather than 4, they'd have a much better chance. Or they basically do all best of 1s and then best of 5s. The whole ecosystem, once you get to Worlds, is best of 5s. All the other regions have an advantage for doing best of 3. They're just more experienced with adaptation within a game. Also, it's very, very interesting to see what teams choose between sides, draft adjustments. It's good for players and coaches to have to make those adjustments rather than practicing for 2 teams during the week, having to make 2 full-day trips to the studios and come back to play 1 game. No, I want to know that team in depth. I want to practice against 1 team. I want to play them in game, make adjustments. This is coming as a coach. Make adjustments, see them, talk about it, make another one if there's a game 3, and then when you go home and you review the tape with your team on Tuesday, you say, all right, here's the things that we did well, that we spoke about and that we planned for. Here's the things that need to improve. And that immensely changes in a positive way the total performance, the total level of play in the league. So anyways, I think these are mutually beneficial. I'm interested to hear your takes. If you have any, we'll talk about it in the comments, and I'm sure to make a follow-up to this. Until then, keep it surreal. Peace.